Mm-hmm.
And to start this very fun
Did you
topic,
press it? You didn't press go live.
it's live.
Oh,
Nobody's
it didn't
here.
say it on mine.
It's been going for 12 seconds now. It's fine.
Oh.
Hey,
Yes.
yeah, bait and switch. This is a very short video to open with. This is something that might be interesting or it might be boring. We'll see what happens.
It's my
Are
sleep
you
paralysis
lonely?
demon. No,
You
I'm
must
not.
be, because headline after headline says loneliness is everywhere in America.
Yeah,
There's
you're
a
agreeing
is.
with
mass
him.
loneliness crisis going on.
Loneliness is an
Uh-huh.
epidemic.
We are absolutely in a loneliness crisis.
As usual, the media are just wrong. Loneliness isn't getting worse. Nothing to back it up.
Well, yes, there
As usual, the media is just wrong. This guy is insane. I fucking love John Stossel so much, bro.
there is an epidemic of headlines saying that there is a
Epidemic of
loneliness
headlines!
epidemic. There's no empirical data that actually shows that we feel more lonely now than we did in the past.
In his new
The
book,
Capitalist
Johan Norberg
Manifesto.
explains that when
Cringe.
Mall,
researchers
I held a
compare
bake
people
sale,
with
a
previous
racist bake sale.
generations at the same stage of life, they don't find evidence of increased loneliness.
Which is interesting, because I would also think that it's less of a stigma to tell people that you feel lonely nowadays.
But more people live alone now.
No, it's not.
I would think that would make
Oh my
more
God.
people.
Living alone is not the same as being lonely. You can be surrounded with people and be lonely. Like, the fuck are you talking about? Doesn't everybody know this? Like, what the fuck?
Lonelier.
But the interesting thing, and this
John
is what they
Stossel's not
never
looking
tell
good.
you in the reports,
He's
is that
frogifying.
people who live alone and spend less time surrounded by other people are also more happy with those relationships.
Not only that, but when people around the world are asked, do you have relatives or friends
is
you
this
can
graph?
count on to
Share the
help you?
population that says they have
People
no
in countries
friends.
where more
Oh yeah, no one they can rely on.
people live alone rarely say no. But in places like India and China, where I would think
That's
they have
crazy.
big families to count on, many more say they have no one.
It's the complete opposite of what people expect in traditional and less market-based systems.
Oh my God, please tell me that because they're communists, they're fucking more lonely. That's so funny. Is that the conclusion we're coming to?
Societies between 20 to 30 to 40% say they have no one to count on if they need help. Whereas in the rich,
Look, that's that way in China because of the way Chinese society is because of the
The
government.
social safety nets. You shouldn't need anyone
Yeah.
but the government.
Yeah, exactly. So they only rely on that, and everyone wants the money in their pocket, so they don't help anybody. Nobody wants to help anybody. Like, there's literally a domestic violence epidemic in China that nobody's going to step into because they think that domestic violence is their problem. It's ridiculous. Like, how are you meant to rely on someone when nobody's going to help you, even in public, if you're getting
I
smacked
love that they
around?
think like population equals less lonely. You know,
Yeah,
like
isn't that insane?
why would that be the case?
I feel like a higher population would make it more lonely.
Oh, crazy! Almost like that's what the graph showed. Even we're
Mm.
gonna go to a more crazy conclusion.
Yep.
You know,
most
there's
individualist.
and especially like in China, like individuality, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's why, like, you know, the weird hairdresser guys who inhale concrete dust, you know,
Yeah.
like they have individuality. They're cool as fuck.
Yeah. And they have their little groups, and I bet you they're not as lonely. And they're funny how that works.
Societies, it's in the low single digits.
It's the opposite of what the scaremongers tell us, which is that
Scaremongers.
capitalism makes us
Okay,
feel lonely
scaremongers
and
equals
empty
Jacobin
inside.
and okay, well, okay, hang on, John Stossel, you're misleading us here because this is about capitalism. It's
Not
not
the
about
best
the
source.
loneliness epidemic, okay? And also, what, like, okay. everyone like, oh, crazy. Somebody made their article count for the week. You know how many fucking communists have written this exact article?
Yeah.
Like, oh my god. It's like 101 like journalism for the left wing.
One of the huge sources of loneliness is capitalism.
Capitalist values of ruthless greed and
Jay
competition.
Shetty.
True,
The
though.
material incentives of capitalists isolate us from nature,
Hey,
each other,
second
and
thought.
ourselves.
Nice.
It's a miracle we aren't even lonelier.
I understand why those charlatans get an audience because, yeah, at times we all feel lonely and life and relationships are hard.
But Norberg's new book points out the many ways capitalism makes
Oh
life
my god. Oh my
infinitely
god, bro.
people
Did you
less
see
than-
that book? Did you see that fucking book? Wow. Wow.
What an awful cover.
I fucking hate John Stossel so much.
lonely.
Every poll we're looking at shows that people say that they're less lonely in the most market-oriented societies.
The Human Freedom Index ranks how free and
Uh-huh.
market-oriented societies are. Not only are people less lonely in these capitalist countries, but
Hey,
If you
Australia.
increase freedom
No.
by
It doesn't
1
necess-
point, you reduce loneliness.
What was that about it measuring markets? Come on. That's like it measures economic freedom.
Mm.
You know, it's like it measures freedom. Chill out, John. Stop inserting shit.
levels by 6 percentage points.
under capitalism, people compete. Sounds divisive. Sounds like it would pull us apart.
Feudalism, communism, fascism, that's divisive. That's all
Yeah.
based on getting resources by taking them from somebody else. What capitalism does
Ah!
is that it forces
Ah!
us to think about
Uh-oh.
what the other guy wants.
Uh-oh.
To sell someone anything,
Does it?
you have to
Does it?
The most important aspect of capitalism
This guy's delusional. Bloody hell.
is cooperation. And that's why you constantly hear every time you buy something this double thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, this
You-
clip. I've
Oh
seen this.
my god.
I've seen this clip of John Stossel getting the thank you coffee
Yeah,
thing.
because
I've
he
seen
did
this
a
end
he
clip.
did a whole video on it.
Oh, did he?
I think we watched it, yeah.
Say thank you, and they thank you.
Maybe we
it's
watched
called
this video
customer
before.
service. It's literally called customer service. What the fuck
Yeah.
are you talking about?
What they want is a wage. They want to. They don't
Mhm.
actually want to be there. Bro,
Yeah.
I was just
They
thinking
don't wanna
today because like
starve.
it's snowing outside. The amount of
Mm.
times like I had to like risk my life driving to work in a shitty car from like across the city.
Yeah.
You know, for like
on your
nothing.
time too. Yeah.
For like
on your time.
nothing, right?
Right.
Like I could have died any one of those. You know,
Mhm.
just because how I had to go to work. I lived on a hill. So I literally
Oh,
would have
no.
to hope there's no cars and just fishtail it at the bottom of the hill because it was going to skid out anyway because of the snow. Because it was like in the hood too, so they didn't plow these roads,
Jesus
right?
Christ.
So I would always have to like skid down and like do a turn into it, right?
Fucking Jesus Christ. Yeah, but it's the same thing. Like, imagine if I got a job on the other side of Melbourne. It takes an hour to drive there. It's like 50 kilometers. It's a lot of petrol, right? On my time, and then I have to pay for that petrol to drive there, and I can't claim it for work expenses on taxes. So, what the fuck?
Yeah.
So it's the whole thing's
It's fucking
ridiculous.
crazy. It's fucking crazy that regular employees can't fucking write off shit like that.
It's insane.
It's weird. You both say thank you. You both feel you won.
And then on top of that, you've got income tax, you've got tax on petrol, you've got tax on buying a car, you've got tax on buying items, you've got tax on all this other shit. Leaves you with no fucking money. The government's fucking siphoned it all off. What do they do with it? Fill the road with fucking potholes. Fuckwits.
I'm brought up with the idea that I should say thank you when somebody has done me a service. But in the market economy, we do each
No,
other
you should
services
pay them
constantly.
a fair
That's how we get
wage
rich.
when they do you a
Yeah.
service.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly right.
You don't say thank you. You give them a fair wage.
Thank you.
That's how you say thank you.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
That's why we call it gratitude.
Yeah, exactly.
Sure, no deal ever happens unless both parties think that they benefit more from doing that.
And here's
Uh-huh.
another twist to that. You argue capitalism makes us generous?
It sounds surprising, and this surprised the researchers as well. For many years, lots of researchers around the world have been looking at how generous are people when they're playing different economic games.
You're not allowed to communicate what you're thinking, talk about the decision you're making until you make it.
There are many real-life tests of that. This YouTube channel demonstrated a common experiment. Here the
A
host gives
YouTube
people
channel.
$20.
You can divide this between yourself and a stranger in any way you like.
Not the best
But
source.
the only condition is the other person has to accept the offer.
If he refuses it,
Then you get nothing.
then I get nothing.
Then nobody gets anything.
Then
Hey,
it's game over.
I
So you
wonder.
have
I
two
wonder
offers.
if. I wonder if the simple thing is that they have economic freedom, right?
Mm.
There's no desperation,
Yeah.
right? So
Mhm.
you see this all the time. Like, you'll see, that one channel that will be like, who's secretly gay? What is that
Yeah.
channel? You know what I'm talking about?
I think it's Jubilee
Huh?
that does all that. I think it's Jubilee that does all
Jubilee,
that
right?
stuff.
So they did something where it's like they have to
It's the best channel.
they have to talk and figure out who wins the $1,000. They have to
Mhm.
decide amongst themselves, and
They have to get the mole out of there.
a
person
girl
who
just
isn't, yeah.
literally lied about why she needs the money and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and they gave it to her because they felt like she needed it more. She was just more convincing, right?
Yeah.
That's capitalism.
Yes.
It's never a fair exchange. It's always
Mhm.
it's always has to be in your favor.
Yeah. Which is why you can haggle prices down, but you're still getting fucked. But you think you got a good deal.
Something to the other person.
This man offers to give away 8 of the $20.
$8?
$8.
And the 12 is yours to keep?
This man gave the woman half.
So you got $10.
Is that not the logical conclusion? Is to give it 10 each? Any logical person would just be like, here's $10. Everyone's happy. Don't you think?
I don't think this is I think this is not a good source for John Stossel.
Is that
Got
your offer?
$10, yeah.
Do you accept Sean's offer of $10?
I do accept Sean's offer.
Researchers have now done this test all over the world. And surprise again,
People are most generous in capitalist societies. In
Oh, what do you
places
mean
where
researchers?
people have
That was just a
more
random
of
YouTube
buying
channel, though.
and selling in their everyday lives. There are even studies in Ethiopia.
Wow,
among 50
crazy. Would you
I
believe
wonder
it?
what would happen if you increase the money to like 50
Amazing
grand.
how every society has a market economy, huh?
Mm. Yeah. I wonder what would happen if you increased the amount to like $50,000. What would happen then? Because $20 isn't much money. So I wonder what would happen if you increased the money. I wonder how generous people would be. I don't think they would be very generous with that much money.
I want to know why. You ever see who plays the lottery? You look at what economic class plays the lottery.
Lower class. Specifically targeted in the lower class areas.
It's a tax on the poor. It's a tax on the
Mhm.
stupid. It's a tax on
Yeah.
the people who can't do math.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The uneducated. The forgotten by society. It's an issue. It's an issue here as well. They're everywhere.
If somebody gets me a scratch off or something, I literally
Mhm.
never scratch it. I just throw it somewhere and never touch it.
Fair enough.
It's well, what if it's a
Three
winner? It's not. Shut up. Go away.
They're like, what am I gonna win? $5? Cool.
Yeah. Here's a funny story. As a kid, my dad loves scratch offs, right? Not so much a thing that I don't know. He probably still does them, but he let me scratch it, right? And I won $5, and I said that I wanted to rent a movie with the money, but instead he went and bought more scratch off
What, more?
tickets. Yeah, and then I think I cried. He was like, "You're getting a movie anyway. Shut up." They wanted to go to the video store.
Local Blockbuster.
Yeah.
trying to see who is most generous in a transaction.
He would
in an
also,
economic game.
the
And it shows you
raffles
that
where they would any community thing where they'll have you buy
Mhm.
raffle tickets and it'll be whatever for schools and stuff.
Yeah.
he would buy all the raffle tickets basically. So he always won the raffles.
That's hilarious. It's very generous.
That the closer people live to marketplaces, the more generous they are. So if they constantly buy and sell and negotiate, they begin to take other people's interests into consideration. That's what markets do. They do affect our character, but not in this way that the critics say that it makes us more divisive and aggressive and
It does.
neglect the interests of others.
It does.
It makes us more generous.
In other
Maybe
words,
to other white
capitalism
people.
doesn't just make people richer; it makes us nicer.
Mhm.
Uh-huh.
Thanks for watching.
Isn't this about
video.
loneliness?
They always fish you in with
Mm.
dumb shit. A classic John Stossel. All right, let's watch some news now.
News.
Good intro. Oh God, no.
Welcome back. Well, days after a truce with Hamas collapsed, Israeli
Hamas.
forces have turned their focus to southern Gaza, hitting areas where
God,
hundreds of thousands of
open your
Palestinians
mouth when you
still
talk, Piers. You fucking mumble.
since the start of the war. Turkey's President Erdogan today denounced Benjamin Netanyahu as a butcher and said he would eventually be tried as a war criminal. Well, joining now from Tel Aviv is the Prime Minister's senior advisor, Mark Regev. Mr. Regev, thank you very much indeed
Oh
for
God.
joining me again.
Oh,
Your
no.
reaction, first of all,
This
to-
dude is worse than the
your reaction,
Turkish
first of all, to
guy.
President Erdogan,
Yeah,
who
he's
said
bad.
that of the Prime Minister, beyond being a war criminal, Netanyahu is the butcher of Gaza right now. Will be
Can I
tried
respond
as
to
the
that?
butcher of Gaza, just as Milosevic was tried. What is your reaction to that?
I, of course, don't accept the criticism.
Oh, really?
And unfortunately, this is not out of character for the Turkish leadership, which has, of course, been very critical over the years of Israel.
No, I
and
can't
very
imagine why.
supportive, I should say, of Hamas.
The big question now is exactly what is the game plan for Israel? You're moving into the south. There are, as we know, 2 million Palestinians now crowded into a 90 square mile area.
Jesus
This
Christ.
is already
Bro, do you know what
clearly,
they're
I
doing
would
right
say,
now?
indisputable.
That is insane.
You know what they're doing right now?
No.
I don't know how old this one is. I just saw him on Piers and I said, well, we
Mm.
got to look at this guy. So you know how they told him to leave the north and go to the south?
Yeah.
You know the plot to the Hunger Games, how it's like random cells are going to be like active?
Mm.
They're literally doing that. They have to consult a map on the internet to know if their area is going to get bombed now because they're bombing the
What the
south now
fuck?
too. Right? It's literally the Hunger Games.
That's insane.
It's like all these like it's an insane map with all these cells, bro.
That's fucking crazy. 2 million people in 90 square miles. That's not a
Yeah.
lot of area.
They're even more condensed now.
Yeah, there's gonna be so many dead. Fuck's sake.
A humanitarian crisis there, but also they were told to go south to be safe. Now they're being attacked in the
Oh,
south.
so this is recent.
Nowhere is safe now in
2
Gaza.
days
Would you
ago.
accept that?
Cool. He's literally saying
No.
what I was saying.
When we told people to relocate to the south, it was true. The fighting was concentrating in the north, and we asked people to
We were
move
just
to the
gonna
south
bomb them
because they'd
later.
be safer.
Mm-hmm.
And that was true then. Now the operation is continuing into areas of the south, and we've specified, as has been widely reported, specific areas in the south which remain safer zones, and we've urged people to relocate there. Now, we know it's difficult to move. My father was a refugee. He had to move from place to place in the Second World War to save his life. I know it's difficult to move, but surely it's better to move than it is to
Oh my
stay
God,
in a
shut
combat
the
zone
fuck
and
up.
get caught up in crossfire. It's all a matter of managing risk. We want to see civilians
I hate this
outside
guy
combat
so
zones.
much.
We don't want to see them accidentally hurt. It's best for them to move. And the truth is, we're seeing now Gazans
Hey,
are voting with their feet and
you
are
ready?
moving
Oh,
to
and the last video that we watched, he'd said that Israel doesn't care about killing children. So,
You ready to see this fucking map, bro?
yeah,
That they
I'm
have
ready.
to consult?
Mm-hmm. Wow,
Isn't that insane?
that's
Like,
fucking
how do you
crazy.
even know what's going on here? You can't even read what numbers there are. There's so many cells.
What the actual fuck?
the areas which we've specified as safer areas.
But eventually, this operation is going to clearly lead to you attacking all over Gaza. Where do they eventually move all these people? Is the operation actually designed to permanently displace the Palestinian people, as some fear?
No, not at all. And we hope that people can, when the fighting is over, that people can go back to their homes, and where homes have been destroyed.
What
because of the
homes,
fighting,
dickhead? They're
there'll be
gone.
temporary shelters for
Bro.
them, I hope. But
It's crazy. There's this like the before and after photos. There's one like of a beach, right? And like you can't even recognize that it used to be a beach.
It's just full of craters.
It's just like ash, and rubble. Like it's all like dirt and stuff. Like
Yeah.
there's so much like and charring and stuff. It's
fucked.
Filth. There's dust on everything. It's that gray dust on everything that you see in war.
it
Drab.
is common sense. Our enemy is Hamas. And as you
Our
know,
enemy is Hamas.
Hamas has embedded itself
It'll
in
look like
civilian
Syria,
neighborhoods,
so
in
yeah.
mosques, in schools, in hospitals,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
because you sent them
And
into
we've
there.
had
We put more civilians on top of Hamas,
Mm.
our enemy.
to fight Hamas, and we will defeat Hamas. But once
Uh-huh.
Hamas is defeated, of course, we'll
And we
be
will
allowing
target
people to
the
return
civilians.
to their homes, and of course, there'll be a massive rebuilding and reconstruction campaign of Gaza. That's going to be needed.
How many terrorists have you killed?
So I can't give you an exact amount because the war is still going on. but
Civilians
we-
were
we
killed,
see
and that's what we're going to continue to try to do.
the death toll in fatalities on the terrorist side in the thousands.
You're missing it.
But if you
I
don't
look
know,
forward
how do you
to
know?
actively
If you know what I
engaging
mean.
civilians.
Well, we've got estimates, but because we're not sure, and I'll explain to you why we're not sure. You blow up an underground bunker, yes, which Hamas has
Bunker.
got these underground
Soldier in the bunker.
fortifications across the Gaza Strip. You destroy it. You don't necessarily know if there were 10 terrorists inside or 20 or 50. yes,
It's
because you
crazy. If
destroyed
he's
them
on Piers,
underground.
someone he knows that is not going to be extremely hostile towards him, he's just allowed to spew his bullshit.
Yeah. And they're crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Fortification. So it's all based on approximations. When this is over, I think we'll have a more precise understanding of the numbers. But I've been in.
Oh my
People-
god! Oh my god!
So what I don't
We'll
have a
count
problem
them
with,
later, he says.
yeah, what I don't have a problem with is allowing him to spew his shit, because logical people will hear this and be like, "This guy's a psycho."
I think Piers should be.
A bit more combative. I
Yeah,
do agree, but
'cause
letting him talk
he is
then
combative with
counter.
other people. Watch, we'll see this guy
Yeah.
talk to Tappy later and see
Mm.
how combative they are. It's Tappy.
Because like I think the Medi interview was a bit too combative.
That's
I
just how
think if
he
you
is.
yeah, but if you let them talk a little bit more, then counter on their entire point, I think it's a better strategy.
And I've heard the numbers. It's in the thousands.
Right. I mean, I
Mhm.
hear this from the Israeli side, but nobody seems to be able to produce any concrete
There you go.
evidence. And I understand slightly the fog of war, but the significance of this is that if you can't actually produce hard evidence of how many Hamas terrorists you're killing, and the death toll of innocent civilians keeps rising and
Bro,
rising
you
and
know they're
rising, as
like
it has done now.
the US is like about to fucking so they just issued a limit on visas, right?
Really?
So anyone who's settled in the West Bank can not get a visa here now,
What the fuck?
right? And they're actually like so both Kamala Harris and like the Secretary of Defense, I forgot his name, but like they have come out and said that like the civilian death toll is out of control. The entire Biden admin is now condemning Netanyahu's death toll on civilians.
Oh shit.
Not like full out we condemn you, but like
Mm.
they're all like raising eyebrows and putting pressure because it's just
Mhm.
gone too far. And
Yeah.
because where does it, like I always say, the question should always come back to where does it end?
Yeah.
And so it was first it's just the north. Now they're putting up a block map where they're going to be like, okay, we're going to take this cell, this cell, this cell, this cell, this cell. Like they have it set
Yeah.
up so they're going to hit every cell on that map. Why would they divide it as such?
Exactly.
So where does it end? It didn't end in the north. We should have limited them.
Exactly.
Then
Like, is it gonna put enough pressure that they stop giving them money and weapons? Probably not.
Well, the package is held up in Congress anyway.
Good.
Congress
Good.
is a joke, as always. But it's also holding up Ukraine funding.
Okay. Did they put them together?
They wanted to, but I guess
Uh,
that's something that they refuse to do. I don't know, bro.
Thank God. If they put them together, that's so scummy. They're two completely different conflicts. Like, that's ridiculous.
Over 15,000 by the Hamas-run health authorities' estimation. You know the public.
I love that he
perception
said
is coming
Hamas-run health
Israel's
authorities,
way
right?
the longer this
Because if
goes
he
on.
didn't, this guy
Isn't it
would start
incumbent
screaming.
Yes, he would. He really would.
On Israel to actually be able to produce clear evidence of the volume of Hamas terrorists you're killing. Because if there are 35,000 of them and you've only killed 1,000 or 2,000 so far, then the fear is that the civilian death toll is going to be 100,000, 200,000 before you can even think about eradicating Hamas. What is the line for Israel? Is there one? Or is there no limit on civilian casualties so long as you've still got Hamas terrorists to kill?
So first of all, we don't want to see a single civilian casualty. You've heard me say that before, and we mean it. We don't want to see civilians caught up in the crossfire. That's why we're urging people to.
But it doesn't really matter if they do.
It's common sense. If we don't want to see them get caught up in the fighting between the Israeli Defense Forces.
Yeah, if they don't want to get caught up, just leave. Just leave your home that we're bombing because of these people.
Go
But
to
really, it's to
cell
get you out.
36. You have no possible way to get there because all the cells in between there are already also red.
Mm-hmm. What a great plan.
And Hamas, please, we urge people to leave combat zones, and most of
there are no safe zones,
Hamas,
only death
as
zones.
you know, and has been reported, they've urged people to stay, ordered people to stay even at gunpoint because they want those Gazan civilians.
Huh?
I said, has Israel gone too far? The United States says yes.
What's UNICEF?
Oh, they're like a charity type thing. They feed kids.
Okay.
Civilians as a human shield. But what right-minded person agrees to be a human shield for Hamas? Of course they want to leave, and we have to facilitate their leave. And even now,
United Nations International Children Emergency Fund
in the south.
Okay.
I can assure you that escape routes will be there for the civilians to still reach the safe areas because we don't want to see them come into harm's way, and we'll make every effort possible.
And if we have convoys of civilians, they're much easier to kill for us. So that's also a positive.
It's easier for Hamas to kill too, because Hamas does it as well, because they want the human shields in place.
Mm-hmm.
The numbers, and you ask a good question. Look, we could just articulate numbers the way Hamas does and just make them up and throw them out there. No, we're very precise, and if we don't have a precise number, we're not going to make one up. When I say in the thousands, I know what I'm talking about. It's more than 2,000. It's in the thousands. But we don't want to say numbers that we're not 100% sure. But I can say something that we are sure of. Look, we're fighting a difficult war against a brutal terrorist organization in an urban area. And if we compare ourselves to, let's say, what the West did against ISIS in places like Mosul and Fallujah, I am sure when this is over, and you can have me back if this is not true, but I am sure, because I know this to be the case. When one looks at the experts call
another
the
time ISIS
combat
in
to civilian
Fallujah brought
death
up,
ratio, yes?
you know?
Yeah.
Like,
must be a talking point.
Crazy because that was the Iraqi army. You know? So guess who else? We got Mosul, Iraqi army, Golden Division. Mosul was more of the Iraqi army because they laid the siege on that shit. Or Fallujah, not America. So also
weird.
They're proven to be a lot better than you.
And you will compare the IDF's behavior in Gaza together with against what the West did in, let's say, places like Mosul and Fallujah. I think the IDF's going to come out very favorably.
How favorably will Israel come out with what's going on with the settlers on the West Bank? I watched a very disturbing report on the BBC from Jeremy Bowen tonight, where there is clear, huge aggression from Israeli settlers against Palestinians, a lot of deaths, and Hamas are not involved there. They're not the controlling body. How do you feel about that?
So first of all, we did have a terrible terrorist attack in Jerusalem just a few days ago where Hamas shot at people waiting at a bus stop on their way to work.
Fuck off.
I think that was that Friday morning or Thursday morning last week. That was widely reported. Hamas doesn't control the West Bank, but Hamas has violent cells across the West Bank.
Just
that
like
are
there's cells
there,
in America
and they've wanted
and the
to
Mexican
activate those.
border and the Canadian border. Oh my God, they're everywhere.
All of my elderly
Noble Gold Investment.
Cells, and that's why we had those murderous attacks in Jerusalem just a few days ago. Hamas is there. They're more underground on the West Bank, but they're still a threat. And we've tried to be as proactive as we can be in trying to go out there and arrest Hamas activists. Look, Hamas in Gaza is under a lot of pressure, so they've sent messages to all their cells in the West Bank. This is a time for you guys to kill Jews. Yes,
4 minutes.
And they succeeded, unfortunately, last week. But
Move
we
on.
have limited their
Typical
ability
boring
to
tears. How do you
provide
not
info.
like challenge this guy of all the guys?
The
The Tappy. I think Young Turks did it. There's
Young
also the
Turks.
arms sales one with the guy who's as big as Young Turks.
Yeah. We'll do Young Turks.
Yeah, only because I couldn't find the clip that with
Mhm.
Tappy.
Innocent people being killed by bombs that Israel is raining down upon Gaza.
I think it
Oh,
will be
shit.
seen that the IDF really has done everything that is humanly possible to try to safeguard innocent civilians.
It's very hard to believe that, especially on a day when one of our producers lost 9 members of his family, 9
Jesus
members of his family
Christ.
who are not members of Hamas, not members of the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, not members of any group, just 9 people just trying to live their lives.
Who is that man and what has he done with Jake Tapper? Because that is not something that I've
Oh my
become
God, I hate
accustomed
her
to
so
seeing on
much.
his show or from Jake
You
Tapper.
dirty
The
bitch!
CNN had Israel's Mark Regev on, and he, spewed the usual
fucking better
talking
than
points
you.
that we've heard from most individuals representing Israel on our cable news
You
channels.
are garbage.
And he said
okay?
that
if you get a
we're
rise
doing what
out
we
of
can
attacking
to
the
prevent
powerless,
civilian
you're garbage.
casualties, even as the number of civilian deaths in the Gaza Strip continues to rise day after day as a result of Israel's aerial bombardment of the region. Now, clearly, Jake Tapper wasn't buying his argument, and maybe the fact that the story is now much closer to him due to the loss of family that one of his producers experienced is what's kind of informing his reactions to what Regev is saying here. But I just want to zoom in on Tapper for a second because look at the skepticism on his face. It is pretty amazing.
I think it will be seen that the IDF really has done everything that is humanly possible to try to safeguard innocent civilians.
It's very hard to believe that, especially on a day when one of our producers
That is
lost
pretty
9
funny.
members of his family, 9 members of his family who are not members of Hamas, not members of the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, not members of any group, just 9 people just trying to live their lives.
So Cenk, I'm real curious what you think about the exchange
Oh,
so
here we
far.
go. The
There's a lot
gorilla's
more to get
coming.
to, but what do you think?
Yeah. So this Mark Regev guy, his job is to do propaganda.
Okay, guys.
That's okay. He's from
Okay.
A different government, a foreign government, and he's here to justify killing overwhelmingly civilians, over 15,000. They haven't been able to show any Hamas fighters that were killed. The Hamas fighters are in the tunnels. The tunnels are perfectly intact. And even the IDF says at most 1 to 2,000. An outrageous, ridiculous number that isn't close to true. But even if you take it at face value, that means at least 13,000 civilians bombed to death. Their heads crushed, their bodies lit up,
Dismembered as a result.
That's right. All of these things, and we've now
You
seen
tried
a
so
lot of them. I
hard.
mean, I hate to
You lost it.
point you to it, and I don't want you to it because it's hard to recover from it. But whether you see the Hamas atrocities that happen in Israel, or you see the kids that are crushed to death from the Israeli bombs in Gaza, it's hard to recover from that. And so 13,000 civilians murdered, killed, with almost no hope of actually getting the Hamas terrorists inside the tunnels. And so his job is to excuse
They were
that
filling them with
barbarous,
seawater.
Okay, so that's his job. Jake Tapper doing a really good job, and he has been throughout. Now, he saw that Israel
Go back to the Tapper
tape
clip.
on what Hamas did, and that shook him for
I
a
bet
while.
you the
and
other
any
guy's
human
much
being
better.
would be
Probably.
Who's
But
almost
we'll
the same
pain
size
through
as
this.
them.
We'll pain through this.
shaken by that, and I understand that. And there's nothing wrong with reporting that side. You should report.
Hey, buddy.
Thank you for doing. You see the anti Wolf Blitzer
But he's
television
still
of the
talking.
Israel They're doing their jobs as American journalists and doing a really good job. Because now hatred is spreading all across against Jews, against Muslims, against Palestinians, and we're trying to bring all of that down. Okay, now, and remember, this is not about race or religion. It is about governments. And what the government of Israel, the right-wing government of Israel has done is atrocious, and Regev is about to try to justify it.
I don't know.
So in
kind
this
of an
next
apartheid.
clip,
It's
you're going to
about
understand why
race.
Jake Tapper.
It's kind of an apartheid. It's about race, even though it's like not, because it's like it's not like white on black like other apartheid. You know, it's the same as like the Irish and the British, right? They're basically like the same type of person. Just one, it's dickheads.
Yeah.
Especially in this exchange, is super skeptical of the usual
Super
talking
skeptical.
points and seems to reject it. So let's take a look.
Okay,
First of all,
finally.
I extend my sorrow to him and my sympathies. But if I saw your report correctly, and please correct me if I say something wrong, that happened in northern Gaza, in Gaza City, where a month ago we already asked all the civilians to leave. And most of them did. If there was like 1,200,000 people there was only a couple of tens of thousands left. And one has to ask,
and that justifies it. Cool.
They had ample opportunity to leave. I don't know what happened. I don't have the specific circumstances. I know there's deadly combat going on now in the north, still between these IDF and Hamas terrorists, yes? And we don't want to see anyone caught up in the crossfire, but why didn't they heed the advice and leave the area?
You can't blame them. There's now
I don't
fighting.
blame them.
But you can't, there's fighting in the South now. Where are, I mean, I've been asking this since October 7th. Where are these people supposed to go?
Jake Tapper's 1,000% right. And Mark Regev absolutely did blame them. Why didn't they evacuate the north? I don't know. They were reportedly trapped in the north. And even if they had tried to make that journey to the south, as we all know, as we've shared evidence of, Israel had no problem, the IDF had no problem continuing their aerial bombardment in the south as well as the north. Okay, it was more intense in the north, but they were still doing bombings in the south. And so some Palestinians were like, what is the point of risking our lives on this journey to the south when there's a good chance that we can be harmed on that journey or suffer from airstrikes once we get there? And so he was blaming them. Why didn't they evacuate to the south? No, why did you guys make the decision to engage in indiscriminate bombing? Okay, more than half of the residential buildings in Gaza gone, wiped away. Millions of people displaced. 80% of people living in Gaza have been displaced. And I want to give you some more information about the producer who lost 9 family members in Gaza, 9 family members with one Israeli drone strike, airstrike, not drone strike, airstrike. So CNN reports that Ibrahim Daman, that's the producer, luckily escaped to Egypt with his young family nearly a month ago. But on Sunday, he heard news that at least 9 relatives trapped in northern Gaza had been killed in a strike on his aunt's house. Now, his childhood home in Gaza City was also obliterated in a separate strike on an adjacent building the same day. So that strike actually happened before the strike that ended up killing 9 of his family members. An Israeli strike had directly hit the building where his relatives were living in
You will never see it coming.
Lahia, killing his uncle and uncle's wife, daughter, and 2 grandchildren, as well as his aunt, her husband, and 2 children. At least 2 other relatives are in critical condition, and still others are still buried under that rubble. So imagine knowing that not only have you lost 9 family members, some of them are just under rubble right now. Rubble that people can't take bodies out of because they don't have the fuel to operate the machines necessary to get through that rubble and get to the bodies.
Okay.
It's just an incredibly devastating story. Let's take a look.
Now we're being more specific because it is more complicated in the south. We've actually designated areas in the south which are safer areas, which are especially, there's a number of them. We've shared the maps with the United States. It's been shared also with the UN and the other humanitarian organizations. Listen, we have to hit Hamas in Khan Yunis. They've got a strong military infrastructure there. They've got a network of tunnels. If we want to destroy Hamas's military machine, and we have to act in the south as well.
So that heavy sigh, even though he's not verbalizing anything in that clip that I just showed you, The heavy sigh is a clear indication that he is not buying what Regev is selling. And he had counterpoints throughout that segment. So
No shit. Next
They're
one.
so bad, dude.
Yeah, they're awful.
Just wait, because the guy, is this the guy who's exactly the same size as him? That's
Yeah.
just like a single light. Let's see how much better this
Mhm.
guy is for being like almost the same size.
Josh Paul was a senior official in the US State Department who worked on the approval of arms transfers. That was until he resigned soon after the start of the Gaza war. He posted a resignation notice saying the Biden administration was, quote, rushing to provide arms to Israel. And he said that was short-sighted, destructive, unjust, and contradictory to the very values that we publicly espouse. He's been speaking to the media ever since and has given another pretty explosive interview
this
to
live
CNN's
recorded?
Christiane Amanpour. In the
Does it
first
say
clip,
in the
we'll show
description,
you
does
he
he record live?
explains the relaxed approval process for US arms going to Israel.
In all the arms transfers I've been a part of
Yes,
discussing
it's live.
before, including to Israel,
Okay.
there has always
Interesting.
been space for discussion and debate. You can raise concerns about how are these arms going to be used. Do we have confidence that laws of war, laws of proportionality are going to be respected? Do we have concerns about some of the units that these arms might be going to and their track records? What was different here was that there was no discussion. There was no space for that discussion. There was simply an approach of essentially the barn doors are open, and that remains the case. The Wall Street Journal reported just in the last couple of days that America has transferred over 4,000 dumb bombs to Israel, several thousand guidance kits, and 45,000 artillery shells. So the barn doors remain open. And while I'm certainly encouraged to hear what Vice President Harris said, what Secretary Austin has said, for as long as those barn doors remain open, I don't know why Israel would take those warnings seriously.
Fair
The
enough.
dumb bomb, I had to look it up after watching that clip. They're
How
a
do you not know-
non-guided missile.
How do you not know this? It's
Non-guided
so-
missile, bro.
It's so explanatory.
bro,
it is a
he's-
dumb bomb.
It's not a missile.
No, it's a bomb. It's a dumb bomb. It drops, and it drops where you drop it. It's
There's-
very simple.
It's like it's so funny because he's like dumb bombs and guidance kits. It's like, oh, okay, so JDAMs. You gave him JDAMs.
So obviously we're hearing all the time that Israel are targeting all of their bombs, even though they've managed to kill way more civilians than militants. But that's what they say. But the Americans are giving them missiles that aren't even
He pisses
guided.
me off less.
He's suggesting
Then the Young Turks.
Yes.
Yeah.
yes, it's fine that Kamala Harris and the Defense Secretary have come out and sort of said, "Oh, Israel, we would like you to follow humanitarian law, please." But he's saying, what's the point in saying that if you are unconditionally sending them all the weapons they need to carry out, the pretty brutal genocide or potentially war they are overseeing in Gaza? Next, Josh Paul is asked about the Biden claim that the United States has to hug Israel close in order to have influence over their decisions.
First of all, I would ask where that
Got a whole
embrace
pen and
gets the
everything?
United States.
Mhm.
If you look at what
Gotta
is
have a
unfolding now, it
producer,
is
right?
not only a
No way, this is just
disaster in
solo, right?
You could have a what? A producer?
Yeah.
Maybe. Maybe.
If he puts a
I
whole
mean-
live show together on this level, and
Yeah.
can even pull clips like that, and no clips
Yeah,
are ready
okay.
to jump to clips, like
Yeah, it probably does have at least one person in the back end. At 500,000 subscribers and that many views, you'd
Mhm.
you have enough to fund one.
Yeah, I mean, it
Gaza.
just with StreamYard, it's pretty easy
Mm.
to do.
Yeah.
You just have somebody who's just like in the lobby who can
Mhm.
switch between the feed.
but it is a foreign policy disaster for the United States, across the Arab world, and frankly, across the global South. We seem like hypocrites when we criticize Israel, when we criticize Russia for human rights abuses, but fail to do so with Israel. And so I think that our embrace, we have to be careful with that embrace because it draws us in as well. Secondly, of course, the answer is we do have leverage that we can use within that embrace. I'm not suggesting that America should not remain close with Israel. I'm suggesting simply that as we are the provider of arms, as we are the provider of billions of dollars in taxpayer-funded assistance every year to what is actually a wealthy country, we do have a fair amount of leverage. And of course, we provide Israel with security and diplomatic backup across the region that has enabled its integration. We have a lot of leverage here to set Israel on a better path and to end this senseless killing in Gaza. We are not using it.
But
That was
do
a good answer.
Americans
And to be
really
honest, I
care?
think the argument that you often hear that the United States has to hug Israel close so it can influence it, I think is the most disingenuous and kind of stupid argument I've heard throughout this war, in fact, because the argument is, unless they have Israel on side, unless Israel think, the United States is an ally, they're not going to listen to the United States. Well, the reason the United States has leverage over Israel isn't because Israel thinks the United States likes them. It's because the United States funds Israel and gives them the diplomatic support they need in the Security Council and the UN. So it seems.
But it is also missing that Israel has massive lobbying money within the US government as well, which is a big proponent of it and how Israel continues to be funded by America.
Completely self-serving for the United States to say, oh no, we're letting them do whatever they want so that we can influence them, maybe, right? It's complete nonsense. To the extent that I don't think they even believe it themselves.
I mean, Joe Biden has talked extensively how arms sales do not, arms transfers do not allow this kind of leverage.
No.
Administration. I don't think they actively want to see tens of thousands of Gazans die, but I also don't think they necessarily care that much. It's not in their essential geostrategic interests to save the lives of thousands of Gazans, so I don't think they're that fussed, right? They want to be able to persuade some of their allies in the Arab world that they're not, committed to the genocide of the Palestinian people, because as Vincent was saying before, many Arab publics care deeply about the Palestinian people, as many publics do across the world, but ultimately they want to say, okay, they want their cake and to eat it. They're going to give Israel all the support they need while sort of saying, we would prefer them to follow international law. I want to show you now the most extraordinary claim that Josh Paul made.
He's got good breathing technique. He almost ran out of breath there for a second.
Atrocities Hamas committed on October the 7th, including allegations of rape.
I think what happened on October 7th was an absolute atrocity, it was 1,000 atrocities. I think at the same time we condemn those atrocities, we have to condemn the atrocities that happen every day to Palestinians in the West Bank. You mentioned sexual violence. I was part of the human rights vetting process for arms going to Israel, and a charity called Defense of Children International Palestine drew our attention at the State Department to the sexual assault, actually the rape of a 13-year-old boy that occurred in an Israeli prison in the Moscabia in Jerusalem. We examined these allegations. We believe they were credible. We put them to the government of Israel. And you know what happened the next day? The IDF went into the DCIP offices and removed all their computers and declared them a terrorist entity. I think it is vital that atrocities not happen to anyone, not sexual atrocities, not sexual violations, not any kind of gross violation of human rights. We are looking at a situation.
That's a bit of a flippant use of the term terrorist. Makes you kind of question who they call terrorists.
There's so much dehumanification where people are not seen for the value that they have. And I think that's true whether you're talking about those who are attacked on their kibbutz or those who are attacked in their homes in Gaza or in the West Bank. What we really need is to center the human beings who are at the core and who are suffering so much.
I thought he was going to a much different place, but he saved it. That was all right.
It was a very sort of passionate, compelling argument there. There was also a really explosive allegation. So he's saying there was a charity, an Israeli charity that had noticed or had sort of, I'm not sure if it was Israeli or Palestinian actually, but a charity in the region had brought attention to the US State Department that a Palestinian had been raped in an Israeli prison. And the response from the Israelis was not to take that on board, but to shut down the charity and call it a terrorist organization. Right. Now, we hadn't heard that before. So if this is all true, then the United States presumably sat on that pretty shocking information. Right. So extraordinary. Vincent, I suppose your comment potentially on the allegation that was made there, but
someone
also
else. What the fuck?
And what I want to hear from you. So Josh Paul was sort of suggesting,
who's this fucking
not
guy?
only does it show the US to be hypocritical, but it's potentially against their national
Is this
interest
the Anna
to
Kasparian
hug
of
Israel
this
so
dude?
close.
I
Because
think
countries
this
in
is
the
the
global
junk.
South will see that they're hypocrites and potentially, be less likely to
He's Anna.
line up behind them
This guy's
when
junk.
it comes to conflicts such as Russia, Ukraine. I know you sort of you referred to a tweet earlier. I think it was the one where you sort of said, in moments like this, there are some people in the global north that realize, oh, the rules-based system isn't
global north
really something that exists. Everyone in the global south knew this already.
Global
and
south.
That almost made me
Finally,
somewhat
people
doubt that
using
it does.
the proper terms. Finally, so little videos do.
Does matter to America's strategic interests if they are shown to be backing something like this. Is it the case that while some people in, liberals in the north might be surprised, I can't believe we're backing this, everyone in the rest of the world is like, of course they're backing this.
I do think that there's a
cut
statute
there.
of limitations on how long accusations of hypocrisy against the hegemon stick. If you look back
okay, I hate
at
this
the
guy
ways
already.
that the United States have been acting over the last 25 years, basically every 5 years, if not every year, there's something that is done by the US government that shows
Terrible
it to
breathing
not really
technique.
believe in the global system that it purports to believe in, but shows that the actual global system, which I do think exists and does have a set of rules, means that certain countries can do certain things, and certain countries.
It's like me when my nose gets
cannot.
stuffed up.
Other countries, it matters when people in certain countries die, and it does not matter when people in other countries die. However, I do think this is interesting. I think this movement, more than what mattered, what happened in Qatar that we spoke about at the beginning of the show. This movement, there's two movements in the United States.
Correct enough. It's the woke whitey pronunciation. Just say instead. I will not. I'll still say Qatar.
Is that not right?
It's Qatar. If you're saying it like a whitey, but like you there's also some sounds in there if you're pronouncing it correctly.
Yeah. Okay. I gotcha.
I think this bear hug argument is, if not. It's certainly ridiculous and probably disingenuous. I don't think anyone really believes that the United States doesn't bear hug the other countries whose behavior it actually wants to change. There's no reason to believe that the United States really, really, really wants to change the behavior of Israel. But there are two. But Israel does care about the United States.
It's pretty open that they don't like Netanyahu. Like this admin is pretty open about that.
Not so open that they won't send $1 billion in.
Yeah, but But we also don't like Erdogan, right?
Sure.
Biden has openly said that he wants
But
to
he's
support
in NATO.
the Kurdish parties inside Turkey.
But Turkey is in
oust
NATO.
Erdogan.
Israel is not.
I understand that. But then again, you also have Saudi Arabia, right? Where was the influence there, right? It wasn't about the arms. It was about the journalists he cut up and put in a suitcase, right? To get basically his crimes forgiven. You know, he had to do some shit for that. I don't remember what it was. Do you? It's been so long.
No.
I know, and I'm pretty sure in that Vosh video that we'd post, I say exactly what they gave him away for.
We say we like you, but because we're the hegemon, we're the most powerful country militarily and economically. Israel relies quite a bit on the posture of the United States, or at least it has since the 1960s, to maintain its current position. And there are two things happening in the United States, which I think do matter. Perhaps three things. One is public opinion is changing on Israel, especially young people and especially non-white Americans are pulling away from support for Israel's actions in Palestine. And this matters, of course, in the long term. The United States becoming less white, and of course, like every other country, aging and replacing its homeless people with younger people. And then this other movement inside parts of the United States government, it seems that there's people in the State Department, there's people that are in the larger state, as we understand, including prominent members of the foreign policy establishment, that believe, well, whatever good Israel had done for us previously, and Biden has that famous speech back in the 70s that Israel is one of the best investments money can buy. If Israel didn't exist, we'd have to invent it.
In the 70s,
a lot of people are now saying, well, whatever good it had done for us geopolitically, this is now starting to be bad. I think it's not only because of the charge of hypocrisy that is being lobbed at the United States, but the notion
the United
that
States doesn't care.
Everything that Israel is doing now, the very exaggerated way in which Israel
what are they going to do about
compared to perhaps in the United States,
in
the mind of a State Department official would be the correct amount of mass murder to unleash on innocent people in Gaza, is relevant, because when you see those splits within the state, within the Democratic Party, in
I hate this guy.
the larger apparatus.
Nick.
I just think there's one more, and it's this lady interviewing somebody on CNN.
Yeah.
With the collapse of the temporary truce between Israel and Hamas, here in the U.S., Democratic
I thought her
divisions
name
over
was
the
Bush for
direction
a
of the
second.
war and Biden's support for Israel are once again on full display. Here with me now is House Progressive Caucus Chairwoman Pramila Jayapal. Thank you for coming. It's nice to see you in person. Let's start with where we are right now with the war. The White House says very clearly that Hamas is to blame for the collapse of this temporary
Oh my
truce for
God.
a few reasons. One is that they refused to release the remaining women, some of whom, sounds like most of
Here
whom
we
are
go.
20 to 30-year-old women. They're hostage inside Gaza. They also renewed the military attacks against Israel.
You know, did you
have
see
repeatedly
what I
called
said about
for
they
Israel
gave the hostages Klonopin on release?
No.
Yeah, so they jacked all these people up with Klonopin, and that's why the releases are so weird. And commies are running with the ball, saying like, "Oh, they were treated well. They're so happy." It's like,
What
yeah,
is
they're on
that?
fucking Klonopin.
What is it?
It's let me look up the specific drug class.
Mm.
But I think it's specifically for anxiety.
Okay.
to implement an indefinite ceasefire. But given what we have just seen with what I just described, is that realistic?
Well, it's what has to happen, and I do think it's realistic. I think what we saw is after many weeks of saying we couldn't get to a ceasefire, that was not going to happen. We did have a temporary ceasefire, and what happened? We were able to see a significant number of hostages released. We were able to get humanitarian aid.
Yeah, it's
into
a
Gaza.
benzo.
And I think the
Okay.
So it's like Xanax.
Yeah. Okay.
long-term
So
plan
they're just
for what
acting weird, were they?
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
happens is incredibly important. Now you've seen Vice President Harris made a very strong statement yesterday. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin also was very clear that if you engage in urban warfare in the way that Israel did in northern Gaza, what you will do is perhaps win a temporary victory or a reprieve, but you're not going to win the long-term strategic war. So the only way, Dana, to get through this is to make sure that we, first of all, do not
Oh,
have
also,
the kinds
this is
of
something we haven't
casualties.
seen any of these people cover, but Israel's talking about making Qatar dissolve Hamas's political office.
Interesting.
They might.
That would change everything.
It would certainly not be a smart thing to do.
Why?
How are they going to negotiate?
True.
Plus, they'll just go somewhere else, probably.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not sure. I'd have to look into it more.
That we saw in northern Gaza, there's no way to do that with the kind of war that Israel is waging right now on Gaza.
Well, a couple of things. One is, you said it worked. Yes, there were hostages who were released, but it wasn't even an actual hard ceasefire. They were just trying to get another day, and Hamas wouldn't comply. So what makes you think that Hamas would comply with a longer-term ceasefire?
Well, I think this is all about negotiation. Qatar has been incredibly helpful here. It's not clear to me from the reporting who was to blame for.
You don't believe the Biden administration that Hamas?
Well, I just think it's
won't
very
release
complicated.
young women.
I think it's very.
What does the
very
Biden
complicated.
administration have to do with it?
It's not.
Did you hear
we
how
don't
she
have all
slid
the
in the?
information in front of us.
Yeah. The CNN point.
She said something about young women.
Yeah, she just emphasized it.
We obviously can rely on some statements that are made, but I think that in these negotiations, everybody wants something. And I think Qatar has said that Hamas is still at the table. Israel should still be at the table. In fact, some of the Israeli hostages are saying that Israel should still be at the table because this is complex negotiation, and it doesn't happen unless both sides are willing to come to some kind of an agreement. That's how we got the first 7 days.
That's that's a really important point about both sides being willing to come to an agreement, because regardless of what has happened last week, and let's just say there is a more permanent ceasefire.
She going off the top
You
of
are
her head?
hearing
I don't know.
from Hamas leaders over and over again that the brutal massacre of the 1,200 Israeli civilians was just the beginning, just a rehearsal, and that they want to continue to do it over and over again. So a ceasefire would keep that brutal terrorist regime in place in Gaza.
I don't think that's true. I think that what is true is that Hamas needs to be taken out. It is a terrorist
How would
organization.
you do that?
But I think the way to do that, as many terrorism experts have said, is to create a durable
Good
and
work.
strong coalition of allies within the Middle East,
Uh-huh.
with the United States, with Israel, to make sure that we have a long-term political solution, that there is an alternative to Hamas to lead in Gaza
Okay.
and to establish a state for Palestinians. This is, I mean, we have to condemn what Hamas did on October 7th. We cannot allow for 15,000 Palestinians to date to have been killed, 3/4 of whom are women and children, and say that that is going to help us in the
And the
long
kill,
term.
Numbers.
Morally, Dana, morally, but also strategically for Israel.
Yep.
The only way through this is to create a situation where there is a
She seems to know
political
what she's talking
solution
about.
that
She's just
involves
like
Palestinians
a
and
clerk
an
or
Israeli.
something. Like she did something in the caucus.
Okay.
Like I don't know if she's a representative, but I don't think it said she was a representative.
Mm.
I think ideally what you're talking about could make sense. It's just unclear how you get from here to there. Who's going to get rid of Hamas?
Oh my god.
If
I hate this lady so much.
She's awful.
if there's no
Who's gonna
continued,
get rid of Hamas?
war, and I think what you're relying on is the pressure from Arab states, and they haven't been willing to do that.
It's not just that, well, part of the reason they haven't been willing to do that is because we have been allowing
Yeah.
Israel to literally indiscriminately bomb hospitals, violate international humanitarian
True.
law. And so we are
Even
creating
pre-October.
enemies.
Okay, even pre-October 7th. Can I just ask you one more thing about that? You have seen the information and intelligence that Hamas has used its own civilians. The death of civilians it's horrendous. But
Oh my
Hamas has
God,
used
this
its own
lady's
civilians
worse
as
than the
human shields
fucking
for
genocide
hospitals and so
guy.
forth.
She's so fake.
She's literally worse than Piers, the genocide guy.
Are
This
places
is
where
wild.
Hamas keeps weapons and
Well-
keeps its civilian, its Hamas leadership that they had
She gets the Karen demographic.
their headquarters there.
Dana, international humanitarian law says that you cannot attack a hospital unless there are some circumstances. If rockets are fired from that hospital, that is one thing. But hospitals are protected. We have had refugee camps that are bombed. Right now,
Israel
there
loves
are
doing that
even
shit.
the only pediatric hospital in Gaza is not operating. If we want to defeat terrorists, we have to abide by international humanitarian law. That is just my fundamental belief.
Yep.
And that
This is
at the end of the
100%
day-
one of my core philosophies
Mhm.
is that you need to uphold human rights because it's their incentive to catch you slipping to use it as propaganda.
Exactly.
What we need is a lasting coalition.
There you go.
That is not
Chairwoman.
going to be formed if
There you go.
Israel continues to do what they are doing. And the United
Okay,
States
she's like the
does
leader
not
of the
back
caucus then.
Yeah, so she's it said that she was
She's like not a clerk, she's like
representative-
super, yeah, it says rep right there.
rep of Washington, I think it was.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've never seen her,
of
but
this
she's
kind
cool.
of indiscriminate bombing. That is my firm belief. We should have conditions on military aid
She definitely
in the same
know-
way that
she
we
obviously
do
knows what she's
to,
talking about.
for every other
I
country.
want to ask you about
Good stuff.
sexual violence. And it's kind of remarkable that this issue hasn't gotten enough attention globally. Widespread use of rape,
Mhm.
brutal rape, sexual violence against Israeli women by Hamas. I've seen a lot of progressive women, generally speaking, they're quick to defend women's rights. and speak out against using rape as a weapon of war, but downright silent on what we saw on October 7th and what
True.
might be happening inside Gaza right now to these hostages.
What do you
is
mean?
that?
What we saw on
I
October?
mean,
That shit
I
didn't
don't
hit
know
Twitter.
that that's true. I think we always talk
No.
about the impact of war on women in particular. In fact, I remember 20 years ago, I did a petition around the war in Iraq,
Have you said
saying
have
that
you talked about it
oh,
since October
absolutely,
7th?
and I've condemned what Hamas has done. I've condemned
Specifically
all
against
of the
women?
actions. Absolutely,
What
the
the fuck
rape,
is her problem? Jesus
of course.
Christ.
But I think we have to remember that Israel is a democracy. That is why they are a strong ally of ours.
Eh,
And if they
Oh,
do not
come
comply
on.
with international humanitarian law,
Yeah,
they
dude.
are bringing themselves to a place that makes it much more difficult strategically for them
Yeah.
to be able to build the kinds of allies to keep public opinion
Yeah.
with them. And frankly, morally, I think we cannot say that one war crime deserves another. That is not
It's
what
true.
international humanitarian
with-
law
Eye
says.
for an eye, it
With-
doesn't
with
work.
respect, I was just asking about the women, and you turned
Oh
it
my
back
God.
to Israel. I'm asking you about Hamas. In fact,
I already answered your question, Dana. I said it's horrific, and I
Okay.
think that
Like, the whole thing is bigger than just women, for fuck's sake. Like, why? What's her obsession with this? Like, just understand what she's saying. She's not even listening to what she's saying. She's got this point that she has to make, and she wants to make sure
She's
that
like-
she answers it directly.
She's like, I want you to justify the genocide because sexual violence happened.
rape is horrific, sexual assault is horrific. I think that it happens in war situations. Terrorist organizations like Hamas obviously are using these as tools. However, I think we have to be balanced about bringing in the outrages against Palestinians. 15,000 Palestinians have been killed
Shut up.
in Israeli airstrikes, 3/4 of whom
And it's-
are women and children.
and it's horrible, but you don't see Israeli soldiers raping.
Well, Dana, I
Palestinian
think
women.
we're not.
Dude.
I don't want this to be the hierarchy
Bullshit.
of oppressions. I
Right.
think 15,000
It shouldn't
people
be.
have been killed.
It shouldn't be,
Palestinians,
which is
and
horrible.
2.2 million Palestinians live in a 140 square mile area, which is about the size of Las Vegas, with a population that is 4 times that of Las
He
Vegas.
kind of
and-
contradicted.
and
I don't want to
1.8
be the
million
hierarchy of
Palestinians
oppression and then go into.
right now are displaced.
Can
They
I-
are living in shelters. They are being told to move to South Gaza, then South
She
Gaza
really
is
wants to
being
talk about
bombed.
women.
They're being told to move to North Gaza. There are no homes left. The vast majority of infrastructure has been destroyed. This is not the way that we are going to beat terrorism, whether it's Hamas or some
on that-
future iteration of Hamas.
On that note, I want to talk about what this means domestically for President Biden. You've warned that the way that the Biden administration, the president himself, is handling this war jeopardizes his support among progressives and Muslim American voters, and that they could actually stay home. Do you think that that is how big of a threat, political threat, is that to President Biden, in particular when it's possible, at this point probable, that Donald Trump would be his opponent, and he's not exactly warm when it comes to Muslims?
Yeah, that's an understatement. Look, I am a supporter of President Biden. I have been out there for the president, and I will
They have to
continue to be, even though I think that the way that this, the handling of this war started was unfortunately such that it has alienated huge communities. We have to be realistic about that, and we have to do work right now to address that, not just with outreach here, but actually looking at the situation in the Middle East and recognizing that Palestinians deserve the same respect. Innocent Palestinians deserve the same respect as innocent Israelis.
Who do you think was the worst today?
We are nearly 6.
Young Turks again.
You think she was better than them?
Yeah, just because at least there was someone else talking.
I'm fucking better than you.
I think so too. I think the Young Turks really like it was. It's hard. It's like hard to watch them.
Yeah.
It's obnoxious.
Yeah, it's strange. Got another short one if you want to do another one.
Nah,
Okay.
we cap it at an hour. Little stream.
All right. No worries.